In 1991, Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves return as Bill and Ted, the two most excellent dudes from San Dimas, who come back onto the big screen for Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, where two evil robot versions of Bill and Ted are sent from the future to kill Bill and Ted, so their music won't be so influential and bring peace to the future. Once Bill and Ted die, their ghosts must find a way back so they can destroy their evil robot versions and save their English princess babes and win the Battle of the Bands concert in an odd but hilarious adventure, which sees them travel from heaven to hell and team up with Death himself, played by William Sadler, who, by the way, totally steals the show. So seeing how Bill and Ted Face the Music is just around the corner, I thought I would look into Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, a sequel that is completely different to its original but still has its fans, some of whom even claim that it's better than the original. So let's look into 10 most bodacious things that you didn't know about Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Let's check it out. Number 10. The original director thought the script was too crazy. When the original Bill and Ted's movie, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, was released in 1989, no one expected it to be the huge hit that it was. An animated series and video game soon followed. But Bill and Ted's creators, Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon, got to work on writing a sequel, which seemed like the next logical step. Matheson and Solomon actually have a cameo in Bogus Journey, as two of Missy's friends who take part in the seance. However, upon reading the script for Bogus Journey, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure director Stephen Herrick didn't want to return to direct the sequel, as he found it too over the top, explaining that he felt that it was a parody of Bill and Ted, which itself was already a parody. Now, I can understand his shock somewhat, as Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey does go into completely different directions than its original. It's not really a time travel comedy anymore, but now a comedy involving life and death and the afterlife, and can surprisingly even feel quite surreal at times. And yes, it does get a little over the top in places, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I put Bogus Journey in the same category as Gremlins 2, in that they aren't constrained to their realities like the originals, and can often fly off the handles and just go into comedy madness. But once again, that's not a bad thing either, as I find both Gremlins 2 and Bogus Journey to be really funny movies, despite being more spoofs of their original movies. Number 9. The director was chosen because of a short film. So with the original director Stephen Herrick not returning to direct the Bill and Ted's sequel, the big question is, who could the production get on board to helm Bogus Journey? Well, the production turned to the most interesting of solutions, an English filmmaker called Pete Hewitt. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey was in fact his first feature film. The only other film he directed prior was a short film called The Candy Room, which starred Todd Carty, who some British viewers would recognise as either Tucker from Grange Hill or Mark Fowler from EastEnders. The Candy Room would go on to win a BAFTA. And Hewitt reached out to Hollywood to try and get some directing jobs, and after Bogus Journey's production saw The Candy Room, he was hired as the movie's director. Hewitt would go on to call Bogus Journey the most absurd film ever made, adding that the whole thing is ridiculous. Oh, and this wasn't something he said in past tense later down the track either. This was something he said in the movie's very own behind the scenes featurette, which I find hilarious. But I don't think that what he said was an actual criticism. I think that in a weird way it did come from a place of love. And let's not forget, of course, that Pete Hewitt also had a cameo in the movie, as the guy smoking in the hardware goods store. Number 8. Columbia Pictures wanted a piece of the Bill and Ted pie. Orion Pictures had distributed the original Bill and Ted's movie and had planned to produce Bogus Journey too, but it's no secret that in the late 80s and early 90s, the movie company were financially going through tough times. Despite releasing several hits like RoboCop, Dances with Wolves and Silence of the Lambs, the company still suffered several financial blows, thanks to releasing several movies that were flops in the box office, like Great Balls of Fire, the biography movie about Jerry Lee Lewis, and Weird Al's Leap to the Big Screen, UHF. Columbia Pictures could see that Orion Pictures were struggling and saw great potential in the Bill and Ted property, and offered to buy BogusJourney outright so they could distribute the movie. But understandably, Bill and Ted wasn't something that Orion was just going to give up, so they still distributed BogusJourney. But they would still eventually go bankrupt and came to an end in 1999, despite being brought out by MGM. Interestingly, here in Australia, BogusJourney had a DVD released by MGM, just like other parts of the world, but Excellent Adventure was released by Universal Pictures, unlike everywhere else where it was released by MGM. Weird, huh? Number 7, original title. The original title for the Bill and Ted sequel was simply going to be Bill and Ted Go to Hell, a reference to the sequel's more supernatural nature, and a title that sets up the mood of the movie, in which, unlike the first movie, this isn't going to be a fun, excellent adventure, but now Bill and Ted are literally going to hell. However, it was decided that the title would have to change, as it was felt that the word hell may offend some viewers, and might even put people off from going to see the movie. So, BogusJourney it was. And I wonder if this title change happened quite late in the movie's post-production, as original posters of the movie didn't even feature a title at all, but rather a tagline reading, "Whoa dude, pressed hams." In fact, if I didn't know who Bill and Ted were, I probably would have thought the movie was actually called "Whoa dude, pressed hams." Interestingly, in 2016 there was a Bill and Ted comic series which picked up where the movies left off, which was called Bill and Ted Go to Hell. No doubt named after BogusJourney's original title. Number 6, Death After Bill and Ted. So as mentioned, William Sadler plays the Grim Reaper in BogusJourney, and damn, this guy is hilarious. He does totally steal the movie. Just everything about this performance, from the character's European accent that Sadler provides, to the character taking himself very seriously despite oddly being a child at heart, which Bill and Ted bring out in the character, is brilliant. In fact, I think that they knew Death was going to be a great character, as he even featured on the movie's poster with Bill and Ted. However, Bill and Ted isn't the only time Sadler played Death, as he reprised the character again in 1994 in an episode of Tales from the Crypt called The Assassin, where he's hanging out with the Crypt Keeper. We learn that the Crypt Keeper and Death have known each other for many years, and that Death had recently taken away an Elvis impersonator. And just like BogusJourney, Death challenges the Crypt Keeper to some games, where they play rock, scissors, paper, which doesn't go down too well for Death. But regardless, it's great to see Sadler back in the role, and it's even more triumphant to see him returning for Bill and Ted Face the Music. And yes, I guess you can say that Bill and Ted exist in the Tales from the Crypt universe. Number 5, a Stephen King book makes a cameo. There are a lot of famous faces who turn up and make cameos in Bill and Ted's BogusJourney, such as George Carlin, who of course returns as Rufus, along with Pam Grier, the rock metal band Primus, Jim Martin from Faith No More, and even voice actor legend Frank Welker provides his voice for several characters, such as the Devil and Station. However, something else that makes a cameo in the movie is Stephen King's anthology book, 4 Past Midnight. It was featured during the seance scene when Missy uses a book to banish Bill and Ted to hell. The book that was used was a copy of King's 4 Past Midnight, only it was slightly modified and renamed on the book's cover. And if you're quick enough to pause the movie, just as Missy opens the book, you can see she opens the book at the Secret Window short story part of the novel. The irony is, one of the themes of that short story is stealing someone else's story for your own gain. Oh, the irony is superb. Number 4, Keanu Reeves' well-being. So both Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves return as Bill and Ted, naturally, and do a great job. Their comedic timing is spot on and they have great chemistry with each other, and you can see they really enjoy being evil versions of Bill and Ted. However, while making the movie, Keanu Reeves may have gotten more of an adventure than he bargained for, as during the shoot he passed out in his trailer, and after being rushed to hospital it turned out to be an infection in his arm, to which thankfully he fully recovered. I mean, yeah, imagine a world with no Keanu Reeves, that's depressing. But it's great seeing behind the scenes interviews with Reeves and Winter, and how much they were just fun class clowns and really were a double act. During the behind the scenes interviews, Reeves reveals something that I never really understood about the movie. That scene where Ted is in his own personal hell where he comes face to face with an anamorphic rabbit creature. I never understood what this meant. Did Ted at some stage get terrorized by a rabbit? Well, in the interview, Keanu Reeves explains that growing up, Ted always had a fear of the Easter Bunny, and thus the rabbit in his personal hell was a reflection of his fear of the Easter Bunny. Although I've never heard of anyone having a fear of the Easter Bunny before, but now that I think of it, it actually makes sense. But still, does that mean even as a grown-up, Ted still has a fear of the Easter Bunny? Actually, once again, that does kind of make sense. Number 3, deleted scenes. So there are a ton of deleted scenes in which still shots have materialized over the years, giving fans glimpses of scenes that could have been in the movie. These include a scene where Bill and Ted come face to face with some guards in hell, a scene where evil Bill and Ted remove bombs out of their robotic torsos to destroy Ted's father's house, a scene where evil Bill and Ted disguise themselves as each other, where they peel off their skin to reveal their humorous switcheroo. Yeah, out of all the deleted scenes, this is the strangest. The most famous of the deleted scenes is a sequence where Bill and Ted's fears escape from hell and attack the Wild Stallions van, with the army drill sergeant, Bill's grandma, and the Easter Bunny trying to capture our two most excellent dudes, where the Easter Bunny even rips the roof of the van off. And what's really creepy is the Easter Bunny now looks like a mutated hell beast. Also, notice how in BogusJourney people often yell out the word station like it's a new word of communication and approval. That's a bit weird, right? I mean, where did that come from? We even learn that the greatest scientist in the universe is also called Station. So what is with this fascination with the word station? Well, there was a deleted scene in the script which was to take place at the police station. Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon scribbled the scene out of the script, but the word station from the sentence police station was still there. And after a few drinks, the two writers started chanting out the word station and thought it sounded funny. So that's how the whole station thing came to be. Number 2, comic book adaptation. Marvel Comics released a comic book adaptation of Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. I already touched up on these comics in my previous Bill and Ted video from a few years ago, but I'll touch up on it a bit more. The comic featured many of the deleted scenes that weren't in the final film, such as when the Wild Stallions van gets attacked by Bill and Ted's worst fears, and a scene where they get murdered again at the Battle of the Bands concert and are brought back to life again by death. The comic book was so well received, it prompted further issues, in which the Bill and Ted comic lasted for 12 issues, and as you can see by the artwork, the comic book series was pretty out there. There was also a novelization of Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Now, I haven't read it, but from reviews that I've read, it features many scenes and subplots that weren't in the movie, with some readers suggesting that the novelization is probably more of a reflection of an earlier draft of the script, which isn't uncommon for film novelizations, as the same thing happened with the Golden Child novelization. Also, going by reviews that I've read, people seem to either love or hate this book. There doesn't really seem to be any middle ground. Number 1, most triumphant release. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey was released in July 1991 and made $38 million on a $20 million budget. It only made $2 million less than its predecessor, but that's still pretty impressive as back then, sequels didn't tend to do as well as their originals, so profit-wise, its reception was fairly close to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Bogus Journey got mixed reviews from critics, with several critics finding it fun and enjoyed the charm of Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves, but felt the story was silly and all over the place. But it was noted that the film was still enjoyable and gets several laughs. Some critics even preferred it to the original and admired its originality. Bogus Journey is a daring sequel in that it takes the Bill and Ted story down into new territories, rather than doing the same thing all over again. It would have been very easy to just do another time-traveling caper, but instead we get a surreal journey of Bill and Ted dying and going into a strange and bizarre afterlife, proving that Bill and Ted can be a franchise that exists outside the time-traveling subgenre. And I think that it's a movie that over the years has gathered more and more appreciation from fans, and it's just as celebrated as its original. It proved that despite being a completely different movie, Bill and Ted still had a most triumphant return to the big screen. I think that the key word with Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey is, it's different. It's the same characters that we have come to love, but in a different adventure, which takes the franchise into different territories. Personally, I love this movie and I have seen it hundreds of times. I do think that Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is the better movie, but I also find Bogus Journey to be the funniest of the two. And I don't know, it just feels slightly more polished than the original. So it is a very enjoyable chapter in the Bill and Ted story. Anyway, I'm Minty, and station. See ya!